Okay, so one of the questions that I get asked more than any other question is what do I mean by libertarian communism? And so I think that any conversation about communism has to begin with the acknowledgement that wherever it has been tried, it's been a complete and utter failure and disaster and quite horrible, bloody, violent escapade. I think that any serious leftist who's interested in kind of radical ideas has to begin by admitting this because to most people, the idea of communism, the word communism, quite fairly and correctly, basically just names a bloody, horrible, genocidal, kind of fascist philosophy, because that is, for the most part, what has happened wherever it has been tried in the 20th century. So there's no getting around that, and one has to take that very seriously. The whole reason why I'm interested in something like what you could call libertarian communism is precisely because it's a way of trying to find and hold on to what is a value and perhaps even kind of philosophically necessary in the concept of communism, while also taking deadly seriously the actual reality of most communist systems as they've been attempted in the 20th century. So let me try to spell that out for you. We'll just go one word at a time. And let's actually start with the second word, and we'll move to the first after. So why even be interested in communism still today after its horrible track record? Well, to me anyway, the reason why I'm still interested in talking about communism is because it seems to me that it names a certain kind of ethical necessity, which is that all human beings have ultimately human dignity and are of equal value and worth. They're not equal in ability, they're not equal in temperament, and one should be absolutely honest about that. There's nothing that the left has to fear in those realities. But I do think that all humans are equally valuable in the sense of basic dignity. And so long as that is the case, I think that it is an ultimate ethical obligation of all human beings to be constantly searching for the ways of interacting and of organizing human relationships and communities in the way that is most conducive to all people having equal access and equal opportunities to flourish, basically. And I do think that the current sort of tendency of modern society, whatever you want to call it capitalism or even just modernity, is one in which some people are systematically more likely to have access to resources than other people. And there's no justification for that. It's totally based in sort of historical, arbitrary, contingent events and distributions of chance. And so I think that is a unconscionable state of affairs for any society. So I anyway talk about communism and still am interested in the idea of communism because it seems to name this radical necessity that we have to do everything we can as human beings. We are obligated to try and figure out the way in which every person can have radically equal access to all opportunities. So it's really just a kind of militant um, commitment to figuring out the way in which radical equality of opportunity and access, not of outcome, can be established for as many people as possible. It's not just the belief that is kind of preferable or we should slowly try to gradually achieve that. It's the belief that it's absolutely necessary ethically, and it's necessary immediately, and that we have to be kind of freaking out to figure out how to do that um, as soon as possible. So that's really just all communism means to me. That it's that basic idea. The reason why I'm interested in something like what you would call libertarian communism or what some people call anarchist communism is precisely to say that, to me, the key point is it's communism where we explicitly say we're never going to force anything on anyone. That's basically the qualifier. That's super important because of the history of the 20th century. What all of the attempted communist systems in the 20th century are characterized by is the belief that it's okay to force things on people. That's what they all have in common, and that is, I think, why they all go terribly, terribly badly. I think that's why they're both ethically unconscionable and also why they fail politically and economically, because ultimately things that try to force other people to do things are ultimately doomed, I believe. So that's basically all there is to it. And that's why I think, you can talk about communism seriously and responsibly, so long as you kind of give it this libertarian qualifier, because it's that element of force that is what makes communism, as most people know it, the admittedly bloody and violent, horrible kind of tendency that it truly was in the 20th century. So long as you're absolutely committed to not forcing anything on anyone, then the radical commitment to communism can be genuinely separated from the bloody, horrible efforts of the 20th century.